Welcome to the Courage to Be podcast with Tanya Vasallo. Before we get into this episode, I want to share with you that I'm on a mission to close the gender gap in the podcasting world so that more and more women's voices are heard. If you feel that this is something you value too, then please rate, review, and share the podcast. And in exchange, and as my way to say thank you to you, I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. All you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And today we have Sugey Piedra with us. Welcome, Sugey.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
I'm so excited to hear about your journey, talk money, talk taxes. I know people might be like, oh my God, I'm intimidated, but please don't, because I know Sugey's going to take us on this journey of how she got here and how this can benefit you. You know, we all need to have this conversation about money and taxes because money touches everything and taxes touches like we all have to file taxes. So,
Right.
Sugey, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you arrive here? What is it that you do? And yeah, tell us a little bit about your story.
Yes, of course. First and foremost, obviously, as a woman, it's been difficult just finding the courage to voice out what I really wanted to do. I didn't start my business till I was about 40 years old. And that was a mission in itself, finding the courage to be able to say, this is what I want to do. But before that, I'm the oldest of five sisters, so we're all girls. My parents are immigrant parents, and being the oldest just came with its own challenges, having to help my parents do pretty much anything and everything, translating, learning to manage the household at a very early young age, being a mom in a sense to my younger siblings, my little sisters, and being the role model. Just it came with a lot of responsibility, a lot of weight that I didn't realize I was carrying until I started to do more self-work. And my whole thing was always to, I had to be responsible. I had to be responsible. And responsibility meant that, I kind of just felt like I needed permission to do anything. But, you know, I was still very rebellious and I still lived a really good life. I'm not going to complain. I'm very curious and adventurous in some sort of way. And so I would always do things behind my parents' back to make sure that I still got to experience my life. And that was really exciting. When I think back now of all the chaos I may have caused that was innocent, but yet it was fun. But at 23, I had my son and I had to become again, a responsible mom, and I had to provide. And, it was a time of building just my personal life. So I did what everybody else would do is get a good paying job, put school on the back burner, and I started working for a CPA. The CPA took a liking. He's like, look, you're very smart. I was his receptionist at the point, and he's like, you're very smart. You like numbers. And I think that, you can help me data enter some tax returns and all this other stuff. So that's where I first touched a tax return and really learned the more strategy, the more advanced stuff. Before that, little did he know that I was already preparing my dad's taxes since I was, I don't know, maybe 14, 15 years old. And I already knew the ins and outs, which is kind of why I had applied for that position. But they didn't know how much I knew of just the back end, like really handwriting the numbers on these forms. And so when he started asking me to data punch tax returns, I was more advanced than he expected me to be. And so I was like, yeah, I said, I didn't know that it was this technical, but I've been doing taxes for myself and my parents for many years. But I just had a natural thing for them. I made taxes very simple because I had to explain them and translate them to my parents. I had to explain to them why, they were getting a refund or why they were not, or why my parents were audited at a really young age that when I was, and I had to help them translate that, why their preparer got them audited or what mistake would happen. And so I kind of that's now my one of my strengths is to be able to simplify such a complex subject for people, something people fear, and yet I make it to where they're like, I feel like I'm being taken care of. And I'm like, because you are. I'm treating you like I would have treated my parents at a certain point. But working for somebody else, you realize that you're building somebody else's dream. You're building somebody else's business. And I wanted to have my own business, but it was never the right time. I kept saying I needed another degree, I needed another license, I needed more experience. And, it was something that I think I was just afraid. I had a lot of fear. And in 2018, one of my younger sisters and we were all hanging out celebrating the youngest's birthday. And they're like, when are you going to start your business? We were talking about dreams and goals, just like sisters would or family would. And I'm like, one day. And my sister Cruz is like, I want us to start a business. I'm going to help you. I want to quit my job and you and I are going to do this together. And I'm like, well, if you're going to be with me, then I could do this. I felt a little more brave, a little more courage. And she's so fearless. I tell her that when we did this, it was because she calls me and she goes, hey, I quit my job. When are you quitting yours? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not ready. You know, Being a mom of two and the main breadwinner in the house with, their dad and the dreams we had or the goals we had, I couldn't just quit my six-figure business, job and say, okay, I'm starting my own business. But she didn't leave me a choice. She's like, I quit my job. You have 30 days to quit your job, and we're starting our business. So what are we going to call it? And where is it going to be located? And so I was 39, turning 40 when I quit my job, and everyone thought I was crazy. My parents were so scared of me, for me. And it was a new adventure. But, I'm very proud to say that within the first year, we were making, again, six figures in the business. We grew the business in year four to a seven-figure business. And we had to even reconfigure the business in that fourth, fifth year just because it was too much. I couldn't handle it. It was taking way too much of my time and energy. And life happens, personal life happens. And a lot of the coaches would tell me I started one of the biggest investments I did in year one, which I will always think that I took that road, was invest in a business coach, invest in somebody that could see the potential that I couldn't see, all the limiting beliefs I had, my personal life driving my business life. So there's a lot, there's a lot. And we can take this on the personal route so that you can, if anyone out there needs to just get through those limiting beliefs, we can take it that route. So I feel like I have so much to unload.
You do. And I have so many questions to ask you just in that little bit that you shared. That was awesome, Suhei. Let me see which direction I want to take it because I want to go deeper into the part of feeling responsible at that earlier age. Talk to us about responsibility. I can identify a lot as the older one too in the family. So it seems like a lot of responsibility was imposed on you. Like it just kind of fell on your lap, from becoming a mom at 23, becoming the elder one, of the siblings, having to help your parents, because of language. How have you interpreted responsibility and how have things shifted throughout time of responsibility and what that looks like to you?
I really want to point out that I think in the last few years, and I want to say the last maybe 5 years, which the business is going on its sixth year, is when I've done the most self-development. And I think that that's been the biggest shift. When I saw responsibility as a burden or a cross I had to carry, right? Something that even hanging out with friends, I always felt like I was the responsible one, or I never had full fun because I always had a guard up, and being so serious and, things like that. I felt like that was because I had to be the responsible one. Now, when I look at it as a blessing. I am who I am because of the things that were brought on to me at a very young age. And I know the things I know, and I have the tools that I do have to help others because of those tasks that I was assigned at such a young age. So I don't look at it as this horrible thing I had to learn at a very young age. Now I look at it as a blessing, as a really good thing. And it taught me a lot. And I feel that that responsibility is now, is such a big part of who I am. But now I embrace it. And I tell people, obviously, we all have to be responsible with our finances and all that, but it's not easy. There's a lot of fear behind money. There's a lot of, whether it's cultural or just our society in general, our school system doesn't teach us a lot about money. So there's like a known component to taxes and money. And so because we don't know, we don't really take the time. And so we don't know how to balance our checkbooks or how to manage our finances. And so it's a lot of self-teaching, a lot of reading on your own and figuring things out on your own. And who has time for that, right? So I think most of the time now I see responsibility as something that, it's been a blessing in my life that I learned at a really young age, and that now I can really take off my hat and say, like, it's time to have fun. And I can now have more fun than probably I ever have
That's
at a much older age.
That is great. And I have to ask you, because when you said that you were preparing your parents' taxes at age 14, I don't know if you watched the show Young Sheldon on Netflix. And it reminds me of young Sheldon because he's this bright kid and
Yeah.
he's been doing his parents' taxes since like age 9 or something. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to tell my husband and my daughter that I have met the female version of young Sheldon. This is just so funny but how did you learn about that? I mean, because you had to prepare the taxes for them. And then obviously, once you started working, preparing them for yourself. And you did mention before that you are a curious person, but
Yeah.
what led you? How did you say, you know what, let me go learn? Where did you learn? Was it taxes for dummies? Like, where did you learn about taxes at 14?
Well, it was a have to situation, right? It's not that I picked it up and said, I want to learn this. It was a moment where my parents accidentally, back then, you had to sign everything by mail and send it in via mail. And my parents accidentally pulled out the documents and then reversed the envelopes. They didn't know what went to the state, what went to the IRS, and the documents got mixed. So I went next door to my neighbor, and my neighbor was a white neighbor, much older. He was already retired. But he was such a sweet man. He would always tell me stories about the city and how he grew up, and we would have these conversations. But yes, he was much older. And so I went next door and I said, "Hey, Mr. Tracy," I said, "my parents are filing their taxes and they accidentally got the documents mixed up. Can you please help me put these back together?" And he said, "Oh, taxes." He's all, "These are so confusing. I probably don't even know how to do this, but let's take a look." And so my jaw dropped. I'm like, "You're white. How can you not know how to put the taxes together?" To me, it was a cultural thing. To me, it was because my parents were, immigrants that were Hispanic, and they knew Spanish, that's why they didn't know. And here I'm looking at a person who, American, white, white as can be. And I'm like, how can you not know how to put your taxes together? And so it clicked that it was not because my parents didn't have the language barrier. It was actually that nobody knew how to do this, right? It was, again, one of those things that people feared to understand. And so he helped me put them together or whatever. But I took this interest after that of really looking into, what did these documents have? How come my neighbor, who I felt knew everything and was from this country, didn't know how to put them together or knew about them? And my parents took me to the library because I was like, I have to go to the library and pick up a pamphlet where the pamphlet, explains what taxes are and how to fill out the forms and all this good stuff. And so I would sit there and fill out the forms, and I'd be like, okay, put this number here and then go to page 15 and put it on box 10 and blah, blah, blah. And so I found it like a puzzle. It was fun for me. And I started to find mistakes on my parents' taxes. I'm like, "Dad, like, I think your tax preparer made a mistake. Like, this number doesn't go there. Like, it should go here." And so sure enough, he took it back to the guy, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, like, your daughter's right. Like, I made a mistake. Let me fix it." And then I think like 2 years after that, my parents got audited for something. And again, it was a mistake that the preparer had done. And so I told my dad, "Dad, I'm just going to do them from now on." Like at that point, I was probably 16, 17. I'm like, "I'm just going to do them now. I'm working. I'm going to do my own. So I'm just going to file yours as well." And that's how I picked it up. I made a side hustle of it because once I started to do my parents told my grandma told my uncle and my cousins. And then I had like a whole little book of business.
I love it. This is fascinating, Suhey. This is wonderful. Let's take a quick pause and we'll be right back. Hi there, I have something really cool for you. I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. You can check out all the details in the show notes. All you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcast, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course. You can also find other free goodies in the show notes. Go check them out. So let's come back to this. This is fascinating of just how your story and how by default you landed on this. I want to go to the part of your story where you decided to quit your job. That's not an easy thing to do. And you mentioned your words where everyone thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
How do you muster the courage to override and not listen to what everyone else is saying and just go for your dream, of just doing this?
Yes. Well, I do mention my sister Cruz, right? We co-founded the business together, and I believe she is a big reason why I was able to take this leap of faith. She gave me the extra courage that I needed, I believe. But before then, there was a lot of things that were happening, in the industry itself. I started to do a lot of self-discovery that people needed help. People needed to understand taxes a little bit more. I feel that most of us go get our taxes done because we have to, right? We all have to file our tax returns. We all have the same deadlines. And there's such a volume that the preparers don't take the time to advise you what kind of changes you should make for the following year. They don't advise you of what the numbers are really saying about you. And I started to capture trends. I started to realize that clients were making the same mistakes over and over. Why? Because no one was taking the time to explain to them, hey, change this or change that. I started to notice that, especially during that 2008 crash and 2009 and 10, where we were going through these, crazy recessions or whatever you want to call them, people's finances, I started to realize that it didn't matter how much money you made. It mattered what you did with your money. People that were making, I was doing returns for professionals making over $500,000 a year, and yet they were living paycheck to paycheck, just like my $70,000 couple. There was cars being repoed on families who made a lot of money. In my mind, making $500,000 a year was a lot of money, but yet their cars were being repoed. They were foreclosing on their houses. And so for me, it was like, how can that be? If I made that kind of money, I don't think that would be happening. But I started to realize it didn't matter what you made. It's what you did with your money that mattered. And so when I started to catch on to that trend, I said, I have an opportunity to explain to my clients who make 70,000 a year and say, hey, you're living just like my $500,000 family is. So we need to teach you how to make more with the money that you're making. And telling the family that was making a lot more money and saying, hey, did you realize how much money you brought in and where did it all go? They were living beyond their means. And so keeping up with the Joneses was causing them and their families struggles. So when I started to see those trends, I felt like there needed to be consulting. And so when I brought it up to my boss, they're like, there's no time for consulting. We have hundreds of returns to get done, and I can only allot you 15 minutes per family that comes in because of the volume. And so there's no time to do consultation. So fast forward this whole time going on, and my background was now in finances and learning really wealth building. And I'm like, how am I supposed to teach people this stuff when I don't have the time to? And so I figured that the only way I was going to be able to do this was to start my own business, was to be able to design it my way. And so combined with it was time and the courage and my sister's help, that's when I decided, okay, we're starting the business. I don't want it to be a tax office. I want it to be, have the word wealth. So prominence, business, and wealth management is the name of the business. So a lot of people think I do finances. And I'm like, it's just realizing that taxes play such a huge part in our life, and yet we ignore it. and Uncle Sam touches our money before we even do. So just all of that. So now all the taxes I do come with a consultation, and I'm able to educate clients on what the tax return is saying about them. A lot of them say, wow, I didn't even know I brought that kind of money home. A lot of people don't know where their money goes. So giving them tricks and tips on how to really put their finances together, explaining to them things of how much money Uncle Sam is taking from their pocket, what can they do to potentially keep a little bit more. And if they're going to keep more, I don't want them to just blow it and spend it, is really making the money work for them. So it slowed down the process of tax preparation for my clients and really understanding what all goes into those documents.
I think that's fabulous, Suhey. And I think that's so needed
Mhm.
because like what you were saying before, just the lack of financial education. No one teaches us these things at school. I'm a little bit geeky. I like learning about taxes too, just because when you have your own business, you want to learn, what things you can do better to save. Like you're saying, it's all about understanding the rules of the game and how can I keep money versus I'm sure being an employee, I'd look at it differently too, and wanting to learn about these things. But this is fabulous. So then do you work hand in hand too with financial advisors? Like if they come with you, since that's not your background, like because the way I'm seeing it is you make the money, like these people that are making up to $500,000, but you could be making 70,000 a year and you would help them. So you make it. Everyone needs to make money because we need to survive. Money touches everything. But then you come in because it's make, keep, and grow your money. So the keeping part is where you would come in as a expert, like understanding what are your numbers saying, how to do this, and then growing it would be working with a financial advisor. Is that how you usually go about this?
So typically, yes. Well, I do have a Series 7 license and I put it on hold for so that I can focus on the tax strategy, right?
What, excuse me one second. What's a series seven
A
for
Series
those that are of us that aren't as technical?
Sorry, a Series 7 allows me to, trade stocks and be a financial advisor myself. Remember, I mentioned that I always felt like I needed another license or I needed, more degrees or whatever. So what I did is I went and I got my Series 7 license, which is the license you need in order to be a financial advisor, to trade stocks and do all that stuff. I didn't do it for that reason, to manage people's money. I did it to understand, to speak the language that the financial advisor speaks. And so that I can be able to communicate to them a little bit better of what I see on the tax side and what they see on the financial side. Because when you invest money, there's capital gains. So capital gains creates tax. There's dividends, dividends create tax. And so there's all these other things, and I wanted to know more of it. So I went and I got the license and I could speak their language. But it added that layer of financial literacy that I needed to speak to my clients about wealth building, to say, hey, did you know that your financial advisor can help you with this? Do you have a financial advisor? If not, I have many I can refer you to that understand where you're at and where you're trying to go. So it's a lot of goal based. What is the client trying to do? Do they have young ones that they're trying to put through college, or do they have, or saving for college, or are they in their retirement years? A lot of them, you would be surprised, have goals of even starting their own side hustle. And so, how do they quit their job? How do they go from the W-2 steady income to jumping to a business that we don't know if we're going to have money the next day, kind of a deal? So, budgeting for that. And so, it just brought this whole other level of consulting to my firm that I believe has brought the success we've had, is that we can help clients navigate all those unknowns and giving tips and tools and, maybe worksheets, whatever it is that they're looking for to navigate those unknown areas.
That is awesome. Oh my God, we need more women like you to explain all these things and help us along the way. I want to jump into the part of starting your business and hitting a six-figure revenue in your first year. But you mentioned something key. You've mentioned it twice, which is that in that first year, you invested in a business coach. And
Yes.
then you've also said that in these last couple years of the business, that's been a key thing for you. And I'm a big believer of investing money. It was hard for me at the beginning when I started my own business, because they're not cheap. You go to invest in a business coach or even mentors that I've had in the financial world and different things. They're higher ticket items, services, that you're getting with them. So for me, that first investment, it was like a $20,000 investment in a mastermind. And I'm like, oh my God, my jaw dropped. But I saw the return on that. And I want to hear your story of why you think this is important and how you think that made a difference versus you going at it on your own. When you started out, as well as now that you're at the seven-figure mark, and why you continue to invest on having people support you, coaches, mentors.
So one of the things I started to, when I started my business, remember, I'm here older, I've had a career in this world, but I wanted to be different than the people that I worked for. And a lot of the times was that I felt that they always wanted to do it on their own. And I'm like, I don't want to do it on my own. I want to be able to have a team behind me. Yes, as entrepreneurs, we can do it all. We can be the marketing team. We can be the receptionist. We can be the tax professional. We can be our own financial advisor. We can do it all because we're multitaskers, right? We build a business from scratch doesn't mean we have to do it all. And so I didn't figured, look, I'm later on in my life. I don't have time to make some of the mistakes that I saw the people that I was working for making. So I wanted to jump ahead. And one of the things was joining like networking groups and joining teams that had the resources that I needed. I wanted to be able to be a one-stop shop for my client, but I didn't want to do it all. So I want to refer business. And so I built the team of individuals that would be able to help me do that, attorneys and, other things like that. Well, in the process of building that, I ran into a business coach. The business coach explained to me what they did. And I was like, you know what? I had heard of business coaching before, but the owner had said, no, that's just a bunch of baloney and didn't allow me to look into it, right? When I took the time to really look into what they brought to the table, I started to realize really quick that it was like this mentor. It was like somebody that was not going to be in the business, but could tell me a perspective of what they saw from the outside. And also that allowed me to be accountable for some of my goals. Who holds me accountable for what I want to do? And so, yes, it is an investment, but most coaches will have either some sort of a startup or a payment program or something along those lines that will allow you to buy maybe a course at a time or something like that. So, I love reading, I love learning more. And so, as I learned more about what coaching really was, I felt that I was a coach to my clients. But how can I coach them if I didn't even know what I was really coaching them on? And so I never wanted that title. I don't want to be anybody's coach, but I do want to be able to guide them to those people that can help them along those lines. So when I made the initial investment, the very first thing that the coach told me is your personal life drives your business life. And I refuse to believe that. I refuse to be like, there's no way. At work, I'm so disciplined. At work, I am the person people come to. At home, I have chaos. At home, I fight a lot with my partner. Him and I, we had a we were at this point where our relationship was falling apart. And so the kids knew, but I didn't want to face it. My daughter would always tell me, Mom, you're such a badass at work, but when you come home, you let my dad mistreat you. Like, why? So there was a lot of stuff that was happening in the personal life that I really didn't know was affecting the professional side. And so when the business coach started to bring all this stuff up and say, look, you have a lot of limiting beliefs, you have a lot of, all this stuff. Obviously, it wasn't just pointed out to me like that, right? There's a lot of work that has to be done for me to realize it was a lot of personal work. And when that work started to come through, the more I worked on myself and the more I peeled these layers, the more the business grew. And I was like, how is that possible? How is it that there's a relationship between the two when I totally thought I had them in totally different hands, right? That one was very successful because I was so disciplined about my work and educated and I wanted to do all the stuff. And she's like, because the way when you go home and the way you're treated at home, it drains your energy. So when you come to work, you're not at your 100%. There's more that you can give. You just haven't realized that. And so I started to do a lot of those exercises to peel those layers and I started to shine. I started to really go out and build good clientele base. And when we reached our first marker, my sister and I were very goal oriented. So we wanted to have 5 clients to buy computers. We wanted to have 10 clients to get our first office or whatever, right? So we were building our clientele based on what we needed. And so our clients just kept coming and referrals, and we kept asking for referrals. We kept networking. But every time I did that at home, I would be yelled at for being home late. I would get yelled at for not having dinner on the table. I would get yelled at for, whatever. And so I felt like guilt. I felt bad that I wasn't at home as a mom, that I was out building my dream, yet it was supporting us, right? Because again, I'm the main breadwinner. So if I was being able to make the mortgage, why can't you be happy for me? But I couldn't be at 2 places at the same time. So that was a lot of stress that I had to work through, working through those barriers and, going through a separation. Eventually, as I grew and as I became stronger and as I became to find myself, I started to realize that I deserved better, that I deserved respect. And respect became a big thing. It's like, I deserve respect. I deserve to be treated better. I'm not out there partying and, going out with friends and not being responsible for my family. I'm out there building a business so that I can support my family. And so that took me down a path that was very crazy and sad, but I became stronger. I became a lot more stronger. I became free of the weight that I was carrying. It was probably around the third year that again, the business is ramping up. We're doing amazing. We're surpassing all our goals. The coach is even just cheerleading us on because we're doing so fabulous. But I stopped fighting the coach. That was the other thing. I kept fighting the coach. I kept saying, this is dumb. Like, no, this exercise isn't going to work. You know what I mean? She's like, just do it, and I would do these exercises as silly as they were, which sometimes it was just like meditating or changing my morning routine or, really sitting with myself and understanding all the things I had done in my younger life, accepting my role and all this other stuff. It was sometimes really silly for me because I'm so technical, right? And so, but it worked. It made me such a powerful force that the business just kept growing. And on the third year, right after the final separation happened, he passed away. He passed away 30 days after. And that brought a halt to my life because I felt guilt. I felt guilt that I had put the business first. I felt guilt that I had put myself first. And it was tough. I wanted to close the business down. I wanted to close it down. I felt that it was to blame. It was to blame for me not being there and just a lot of emotional stuff. But my kids are older. My son is 22 now and my daughter is 18. They were very supportive. They were like, Mom, it's not your fault. It's not no one's fault. You know, we just have to stick together and keep moving forward. And I became like a zombie, a robot in a sense. I had to emotionally close off a part of me to be able to continue to work. But I had been trained to do that for so long that it wasn't difficult, but I did take a step back. My coaches were like, you're closing off. You got to deal with this. You got to take a pause. You got to deal with the emotional turmoil you're going through. And it took a little bit for me to finally sit down and cry it all out, scream it all out, pull my hair all out and say, I can do this. I can do this. There's a reason that this happened and I have to get through it. So I put my shoes back on. I came back out and I really turned and told even the clients, life is freaking short. We don't have time to say, I'll learn this tomorrow. Let's take the time to learn it now. I took more of that consultation a little bit more serious with my clients. I had to thank a lot of them for putting up with me through all those times that I was, a little bit off, a little bit gone. But that's when I realized that the business was able to flourish without me. All the processes we had created, the team I had behind me stepped up to the plate. So it was a big learning lesson that I wasn't doing it on my own and that I didn't have to do it on my own, that I can rely on my team, that I can now rely on all my resources. All those connections I had made in those earlier years were feeding me business. So all of a sudden, the business was just scaling. And when we broke the seven-figure mark, it was unbelievable that we could do with the business had accomplished this with me being the way that I was dealing with all my personal stuff. And that's because of processes. We have processes and nobody can take away the processes. And we built something that has systems. We built something that when one of our employees steps into the role, they can flourish in it. I can rely on them. And that showed us that the business was strong, that the foundation of the business was strong. And now I leave at 5. I take vacations. I am literally disconnected from the business, and the business doesn't suffer. So a lot of business owners are like, how? How did you do that? How did that happen? And so now I realize here's another learning lesson. Here's another thing I can build off of, right? To show clients that they don't have to become slaves to their own business, that those are all our own punishments in a sense, that we think we can do it all, but we need to rely on our teams to be able to help us and step in when we're not feeling well or when we need to take the time to recharge, to really look at what our dreams and goals are and sit down in those quiet moments and reflect and not be worried that our business needs us or that the phone is ringing or that emails are not being answered. So all of those were learning lessons for me, for us, for the business. And I'm very happy to say that I share that with my clients so that they know they're not alone. Self-employed people, clients feel sometimes that they're alone, but we're not. We have a lot of support system. We just don't know how to ask for help or look around us and surround us with good people.
That is an amazing story, Suhei. And thanks for your vulnerability and sharing with us the whole process, the ups and downs, because I feel sometimes we look up and we put people that have a seven-figure business, even a six-figure or multi-six-figure, and it's like, oh my God, but they do it and they have it all together. And it's like,
No.
well, go listen to the behind the story,
Yeah.
what happened and what led them there, So thank you for that. We're going to take another quick pause and I want to wrap up the podcast with another important topic. Hi there, I have something really cool for you. I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. You can check out all the details in the show notes. All you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcast, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course. You can also find other free goodies in the show notes. Go check them out. And we're back. And maybe this is to be done on another podcast because there's so many juicy topics that I have with you, Suhei, that I think are really important, especially for women, money, taxes, our mindset. And I love listening to your stories. But I want to go deeper into a part that you mentioned before, which was fear and money and education. We have lack of education. There's all this fear behind money and taxes, so, and you have two kids. What ages are your kids now?
So my son's 22 and my daughter just turned 18.
So there is where I want to go with this. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the fear of money and taxes and how do you envision the education system or how have you educated your kids? Like I know we could do a whole other episode just about this, Suhei, and that's why I prefaced it, but give us a little bit with your background, like how did you teach your kids about money? Did you talk about money? Did you not talk about money? What do you think is lacking in the education system? How can we bring more of this to our kids? I mean, my daughter's 10 and I'd like to bring this, this conversation about money without the baggage that we carried.
Right. And of course, we when we mention limiting beliefs and all that, it goes back to, how we came up with money. Money is hard to make. Money, is doesn't grow on trees, or we can't afford this, or I don't have money for that. And so I had to change that language with my kids, especially. As I learned it, I had to really quickly put it into play for them and make them understand how money worked. So even like with your 10-year-old, right? Having her help you pay the bills. You're paying them, but everything's automated right now, so it's set it and forget it. But have them help you organize even making those payments. It's so amazing how their light bulb goes off and be like, wow, you pay $100 for electricity? That's a video game. Yeah, that's why sometimes I can't buy you those video games because I have to pay the electricity bill, kind of a deal, right? But they start connecting things that in their own little way, right? In their own little way to start to understand the value of that money. My daughter has always loved for us to go get our nails done. But when I say, okay, you're going to pay for it this time, she's like, Mom, that's $100 that we're going to spend. Exactly, right? So just like little things so that they start to understand that there's value behind that transaction. My son would always be like, just go to the ATM and get money. Like, yeah, we can go to the ATM and get money, but there has to be money in that account, right? And so those are the kind of things that are silly and cute, but at the same time, as they get older, they need to understand that how do you put money in that ATM, right? You got to work, you got to get paid. And before you get your money, Uncle Sam has to get paid, taxes have to get paid. So where does that all go? And so those little exercises with kids just help them put that perspective behind the value of those dollars or making choices. We make choices every day. Do we put on the food on the table or do we go get our hair done kind of a deal, right? And so we need our kids to also understand that there's choices to make. Do you want to go get shoes or do you want the video game? Kind of a deal. You pick, but this is going to be your choice. And for the next 6 months, that was your budget kind of a deal, right? And you'll start to realize the choices they make and you'll start to allow them to really start to get it. And to me, that helped the kids as we were kind of growing up. Our school system doesn't teach money.
Yeah.
Our school system lacks all of that. Maybe in high school, you get one class that talks about balancing a checkbook, maybe, but not all schools offer that. So it's up to us parents to teach. And sometimes parents are like, well, even I don't know. But when we start to learn, we can really quickly teach them. I taught my son about credit right when he graduated high school. I allowed him to get a credit card, but I explained to him not to use more than 30%. I explained to him how if he kept up his credit, that he can purchase a car, he can buy with good rates, or he could buy a house, or he can buy or borrow money. And so he started to learn at a very young age, the value of his credit. I didn't know that. So I've made the mistake of having horrible credit, overusing my credit. I couldn't understand. They said, oh, you need credit. What do I need to do? Oh, you need to go get a credit card. So no one told me how to use it. So I just used it and maxed it out. And then that affected my credit. So it was like a lot of learning for us to go through because no one teaches us. But then once we learn, let's quickly show it to our young ones so that they start to understand and have a more advantageous, path with it than we did.
Thank you for that. I think it's so important to understand this. And I do have these conversations with my daughter. It's funny because we got her a little ATM card, and this might be a great thing. You might already know about it. It's with an app. See, here I am, old school, like put the money in the envelope or in the three little jars, for charity, for this. And she's like, that's too confusing. I need it on the app. And so she gets paid, per week for her chores, but she sees it on the app. We can stop on the app. She can even invest money in stocks. She can buy shares of stocks. And then she also has for like a project, like where she can save or invest. Like she's got like a little account within that. Obviously, all of this is managed by the parents. Like we get notifications of every movement or if we pay her out, because of the chores and stuff, but it's a fabulous app. It's called Greenlight. I'll put it in the show notes. It's been wonderful because the ATM card, and she just turned 11, has a photo of her so that when she goes to pay at a place, She feels empowered that she knows what she's doing. I think this is so important, Sugey. And obviously, you have a lot more understanding, and we need more women like you teaching our children and our teenagers and our young adults, because like you're saying, I got totally scammed with Citibank when I was on college campuses. I didn't know how credit cards work. So this is such an important subject. There's an episode, I think it's Angie Matthews. It's episode 34. She talks a lot about finances too and how she started learning about this. And I think the bottom line is get curious. If you're already listening to a podcast like this, you're already in a good place, and then keep following those breadcrumbs. So Sugey, as we're wrapping up here, where can people find you and be part of your community?
Yes. So we're big on our social media. So you can always follow us on Instagram. It's prominence.services. And our website is prominencebusiness.com. And, there's always tools or little spreadsheets we can give away or newsletter blogs that we put on our website. But those are going to be the main ways for you guys to find us and follow us and just get a little bit more of what we do for our clients.
Awesome. Thank you. And I love wrapping up with what is one way that our listeners can live a life with more courage?
I think giving ourselves grace, I think that pausing and every day to me is, like I said, after listening to a few of your podcasts, is like there's so many things that we do on a daily basis that requires courage. Getting up every single day to challenge, to be a mom, to be a partner, to be a business owner, to be an employee. It doesn't matter what your role is. It takes courage for you to get out of bed every single day. And I think we just need to give ourselves grace for all of that and pause and allow us to take it all in. So go out and be courageous.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time, Sugey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. A really good time.
Hi there. I have something really cool for you. I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. You can check out all the details in the show notes, and all you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobee@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course.